Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ba'd. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqara, where did I lose it? Here we go. Not Alif Lam Mim. We can do that, but that'll take longer than the other verses. No, verse 55, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذْ قُلْتُمْ يَا مُوسَى لَن نُؤْمِنَ لَكَ حَتَّى نَرَى اللَّهَ جَهْرًا. So remember when you said to Prophet Musa, O Musa, we will never believe in you until we see Allah openly. فَأَخَذَتْكُمُ الصَّاعِقَةُ وَأَنْتُمْ تَنْظُرُونَ. And therefore the lightning, the thunderbolt struck you while you were looking onwards. So this is again talking about the children of Israel, the Bani Israel, in the time of Prophet Musa. Some of the leaders among them, they believed in Musa, or at least they claimed to believe in Musa. And they're following him and they're saying, yes, we accept you as being a true messenger of God. But then they mentioned this principle that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells them that, you know what, you need to follow Musa and you need to do what he's telling you to do because he's a true prophet. Finally, they got so frustrated and so upset because they didn't want to do anything. They said, you know what, Musa, we're never going to believe that you're a real prophet. We're not going to accept any of the revelations that you're getting until we see Allah directly with our own eyes. We want to see Allah in this world right now. Otherwise, we'll never accept it. Now, just think for a moment, what have they seen so far? These are the same people that witnessed the miracle in front of their eyes. That Prophet Musa was able to throw, with the will of Allah, his staff down, turn into a snake. Prophet Musa was able to put his hand underneath his arm and the hand would come out white. Prophet Musa was able to tap his staff on the sea split in half. They were watching it directly in front of their eyes. The miracles from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were there. And then, despite all of that, and they claim to believe, they still say, we will not accept unless we can see it openly. And it teaches us two very important things. Number one is we live in a time today, and it's been going on since about 18th century, this idea of skepticism. There's actually a philosophy called logical positivism. It's a Western philosophy. It's pretty modern, 20th century. It basically says you should never believe in anything unless you can see it. If you can't experience it, if you can't measure it in a laboratory, if you can't see it for yourself, it doesn't exist. So people do that sometimes. They go up to their friends in high school and they say, you know what? Well, if God exists, why can't I see him? And if I see him, then I'm going to accept it. If I don't believe in things that I don't see. And you know what? That's actually a lie. We believe in so many things that we don't see. When you get a message, you send a text message to somebody else, do you see the text message moving? No. But you see the effect of that thing somewhere else, and therefore you believe in it. Magnetism, you cannot see it. Electromagnetic waves, you cannot see it. In fact, the idea of the dimensions that we live in, according to M theory in physics, they say we live in 13 or 14 dimensions. Time, space, there's so many different dimensions. What's called string theory and another version of string theory says that there's so many things in the world that we cannot see. There's dark matter in the universe. We don't know what's inside of a black hole. So many things, and yet we still believe in all these things. Why? Not because there's no reason to believe it, because the effects are there. The effects of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what He created is sufficient proof to believe that He exists. But there's always going to be, and there has been, like among the people, among the Bani Israel here, who say, nope, we refuse to believe anything except if it meets this criteria. And actually, when you analyze it, you see the hypocrisy in their methodology. The hypocrisy of, no, they believe in a lot of things that they can't see, but when it comes to Allah, when it comes to believing in the prophets, there's an ulterior underlying motive of why they don't want to believe. And there's something corruption in the heart of why they don't want to accept this. And what's really interesting is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls them out. And He says, you know what? This is what these people were saying, and these people were mistaken and they were wrong. So this is lesson number one. Lesson number two is that, you know what, sometimes people say, well, I wish I was there. I wish I lived in that time. If I saw the miracle from Prophet Musa, then my iman would be firmer and stronger. And some people who are not Muslim or don't believe, they say, yeah, if I saw the miracle, then you know what, I would believe too. There were so many people who witnessed miracles of prophets in front of their eyes, and they still rejected it. And they say, no, it's got to be sorcery, it's got to be magic, there's got to be some other explanation for it. And one time I read, I'll conclude with this. One time I read a book, very simple, basic book. It's called What is Islam by Allama Manzoor Nu'mani. It's a Pakistani Indian scholar. And he made a really good point that I had never come across in any other book that I've read about Islam. He said, if you look at all the miracles that were done by all the prophets throughout time, right? Oftentimes we think, miracle done by a prophet is a proof of why you should believe. And he said, but if you look at how many people were convinced by seeing the miracles, and how many true believers were convinced by never seeing a miracle, but they believed in the rationality and the wisdom and why this message makes sense, why it's from Allah, you will find the overwhelming majority did not accept the miracles and made them believe. Which means that the primary purpose of the miracles that were performed by the prophets were actually to establish the burden of proof against people who had the disease in the heart. They would still not accept it. The primary purpose of the miracles were not to convince people who were skeptical to bring them in. The primary purpose was to say, you know what, something's wrong in your heart, even with the miracle, you're still not willing to believe. And this is a perfect example of that. It's that the people who saw the miracles, and still they kept on raising their criteria higher and higher, and they finally said, we're not going to believe in Allah unless we see Him directly. Not we see the signs, not we see more miracles, not we see the true belief. It's not blind. Islam is not about blind faith. But true belief requires purity in the heart and purity in the mind to be able to accept it. And if people don't have that, they can see every miracle they want, but they're going to fall into the idea of, I don't see the proof, I don't know why I should accept this, and they're going to keep on making excuses. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to purify our hearts, purify our minds. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to purify the hearts and minds of other people, to see the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to see the truth of the message of Islam. Ameen. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum.